knowing or thinking we were totally going over the edge to coming back. So I encourage you, develop your faith into whatever works for you, but it's important. The other thing I would say when you look back in life is to say, have you been a giver or a taker? And I can show you a lot of people very, very successful in business today that have been takers to the community, takers from their family. They're always takers, but they never are willing to give back. And one of my favorite stories in particular, we put in an engineering school there tied to UK. So it was privately funded. And I was one of those that went around asking people to contribute. There was a couple I asked, well-to-do family. I said, you need support of the community. Well, my children are off doing this. They're not interested in education and wouldn't support it, which is fine. I mean, everybody has their priorities. The ironic thing is today that one of their children was involved in a bad auto crash, was paralyzed, and now he's in the engineering school at community college. I've never said a word to anybody about it, but you know, it's funny how karma sort of comes around. And I think, so you need to give back to the community in your way and what's something you believe in. I've sat on some boards and said, this is not my passion. I don't enjoy being here. I'm doing my thing, or I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, but I need to be out here. I need to go work on things I really care about. So it doesn't mean you got to go sit on every board and people will work you to death if you'll let them. But anyway, find your where you can give back to the community, where you can give back to your family, and help. You've also got a heck of an exit plan. Here I am, almost 71 years old, without an exit plan, although it's in the works, fine. I never worried about it. I love working, don't really want to go anywhere, but I realize I'm not going to last forever. And I have an obligation to employees that they need to know what's going to happen. Well, again, in our discussion for that with Mary, one of our family members, totally out of the blue, the last one I would have picked, had said, I'd like to get involved. So this is brand new to us. I mean, we're just starting the conversation. So you don't know what's going to become and what's going to do. But I want to spend more time racing. I don't have a lot of years left, I don't think, being able to physically drive a car. And that's the part I really love. But the other is, like I say, I'd like to ease my way out where I'm still advisory board involved, but I don't have to be there at 7 o'clock every morning to be sure that the coffee pot's turned on. And I'm slowly pulling away from some of that. So, have an exit plan. A friend of mine owned an engineering company, very, very successful. He just sold the company, walked out the door, and I thought, he is going to be miserable. He's having a ball. He keeps buying cars and playing lake houses and travel. So I thought, you know, you just got to know what you are and fit what you do. It doesn't matter. But just have an attitude. Word to the wise. I'm going to have a couple of gotchas in here and then we'll talk. One thing I've learned through the business, I spent a lot of money in the early 2000s of trying to sell the company or invest, get managers ownership. And I had one bad experience earlier, but one thing I have learned is very good managers can make very poor owners. They're not the same mentality. And it took me some expensive lessons on this one. One quick story about it, back in the 80s, 70s. I had a CEO of a company. The guy was doing a great job, making good money every year. He had to have part of the company. He wanted to own part. So I sold him 20% of the company. Went along fine. One year was one of those years where the economy drops, everybody quits building, and he could just see his value of the stock panic. He came to me, he said, I'm gonna quit. And he says, I want out. And I said, why? He said, well, my retirement's going away. I said, that's part of the business, it'll come back. And could not talk him out of it. And I said, you cannot sell your stock back and stay, because you will have no confidence from your employees. I said, you've got into this, But he's a good manager, but I just knew it would destroy his relationship. I bought his stock back. I said, will you stay for 6 months and run it? He said, sure. Paid him his stock. He stayed for 6 months. We made enough money in that 6 months. He would have never lost a dime. But he was gone. He gave up a career. But he would have always made a good manager. I should have had him on some sort of profit incentive plan, but not an ownership, even if it was family stock. Something to where he would never have that retirement income going down. So be very, very careful about it. Good managers may or may not be good owners. It's just a different psychology. If you're not willing to risk your firstborn, don't get into ownership, because it'll drive you crazy. And it will still drive you crazy. 2 mistakes, bad mistakes I made. In the 1980s, we had an ESOP in our company, and you could invest 20% of your retirement income in the ESOP. It was very successful. And I think the retirement fund had about 20 million, so, you know, there was several dollars invested over the growth. We were competing with a stock market that had 12, 16% gains a year, and the people were complaining about our stock was only 8, 10%. Now, these numbers sound crazy today, but that's what was going on in the 80s. They finally convinced me, let's shut down the ESOP and let us put our money in stock market. They could have either way, it wasn't mandatory. That was a mistake. And I look at Houchins Industry, the grocery and chain or grocery, I don't know what you call them now, conglomerate, and Bowling Green, that's now a $2.5 billion ESOP, largest in the world. Don't know where we could have gone with it. I think it did make sense, but again, it's that ownership management. But I should have never shut that down. Bad decision. And the other big decision, or bad decisions I made in the years, is one idea or a company or thing we were pursuing is not stopping it quick enough. If it's not working, instead of keep trying to push and make it happen. One of them is the highway industry. We were doing a lot of concrete paving around the country on big jobs. But it got so competitive that we were doing good to break even on it. And it was just foolish to stay, but I stayed another 5 or 6 years and ended up taking a pretty good hit on that before we finally shut it down. It's slowly coming back now. But if an idea is not working, and you don't want to bet the farm on every idea, but if it's not working, either shut it down, modify it, admit this is the wrong deal here or something, and change. And I wish I had done that on several fronts. But anyway, fortunately we've survived. We're coming back. And like I say, I've got a lot more gray hair, still play racquetball, still value health, and I've been very fortunate. I've been very healthy my whole career, because that is so critical. I used to be a runner until my knees finally gave out, but I still play racquetball every morning in Paducah. So that gives you a quick overview of 50 years of life. And I really wanted to open it up because it's fair game, whether it's family, business, racing, that I can share that would help anybody in where I've been through. I don't have all the answers, never will have, but fire away.
Question.
You spoke about shutting downs earlier. Are there ways that you made decisions that you probably would have maybe talked to somebody else and give you some insight on these decisions that you made, or but you felt like you could do it yourself, or what was your thoughts on that?
Generally, and that's a very good point, particularly with inside people within your company. When you're growing, you can do a lot of things with consensus decision making. Everybody, you can sit around a table and what's the best thing to do. When you start talking about terminating jobs and maybe the guy sitting across the table, the whole concept of consensus making of downsizing does not work. And you can try it, but I'm telling you it doesn't, because everybody all of a sudden changes from what's good for the company, what happens to me, including me. Because of that, now if you've got outside advisors, a board, they can be a great help. And I've had a tremendous board. I would have not made it through the last 5 years without a strong board. And those guys, one of them took a company from $4 million to $4 billion. why he agreed to serve on my board, I never understood, but he was a great asset. But he was like a sergeant. I mean, he took no prisoner. And having somebody standing there telling you, you've got to do this is important, because consensus making going down will not work, I promise you. Because it's, unless they have no skin in the game whatsoever. But then, again, the compassion kicks in of what you're going to do to people and those sort of things. And so it's tough.
That is a problem that everyone has at every level of any endeavor, is when to cut your losses and run. Because I don't care if it's just, you buy a stock and the thing starts going down. How many times if you think, well, if it goes down a little bit, it'll come back, you know? And in business, it's the same thing. You can see a losing position. If you hung on to it, sometimes it comes back, but then it keeps going. At what point do you make the decision, take your losses and run? And everybody has that problem.
It is, and it's a lot, it depends on your stand power too.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a stock that's dropping and you got the cash, you may be wanting to buy more of it.
That's right.
Knowing it's coming.
But if you got a margin call, that's different.
That's exactly right. So, you're absolutely right. But sometimes it's more, at least in my experience, we can't take the risk of it dropping any further.
That's right.
Because it could take us down completely. But that's, and it's a different call on every decision. There's no formula for that. So, but you're absolutely right. It's tough, and it's not near as much fun making those calls as when you're going up.
And it doesn't matter what level either. I mean, whether you're millions of dollars or whether you're $10,000.
It's the same process.
It's the same process.
You mentioned that one of your road construction things, you weren't making enough money, so you shut it down. What do you consider a comfortable profit margin? What do you like to work in, percentage-wise?
The construction industry, 20 years ago, we made 20%, 15, 20%.
Okay.
Today, if we can make 2% on a construction project, it's great. And to me, at some point you say, that's not worth it. I'm risking millions of dollars for 2%. So part of it's risk tolerance, part of it is just, okay, if I do that for a year or two, I'm gonna get back to 5. But we have, some of our companies now, we don't bid a job, and these are more not the construction, but more the fabrication company. If we can't make 10%, we just said we don't want it.
Wow.
Now, you still got to pay taxes and all the other things out of that. But,
Right.
But we have just, now the economy's coming back, we can do that.
Right.
2 years ago, we couldn't have done it.
So what kind of tax advice do you give? Like we have a general contracting business out of Tennessee, and our profit margin runs anywhere from 15 to 50%. So, and our business is building fast. We're over 1.25 in sales right now for this year so far. So we're in a huge growth. We're like hiring more crews and stuff like that. So our concern right now is, holy cow, it's taxes. So do you have any advice on?
Be happy you can pay taxes.
Right. We are very happy to be the contributors rather than the takers.
But not too much.
Right, right.
So, I mean, you got to look at domestic accounting methods that you can. How you can play with depreciation, completed contract method. They almost make you go to that now versus cash. But, and you can also, you know, if you don't finish the job, you want to take the profits on it either. So some jobs you want to slow down if you're getting near your end, so you don't.
To carry it over to the next year.
Exactly. So
Right.
you can carry it forward some. Now, be legal about it.
Always. Yeah, we're Christians. We're always.
But, I mean, but enjoy the profit, but also put stuff back for the days when it goes the other way. But enjoy those margins, because they're there now, but finding employees is going to be your big challenge going forward. Yes?
You had spoken about a gentleman that you had promoted and made an owner rather than a manager. Looking back, is there a litmus test for that, or is there any way you could have anticipated that? I mean, for other people here that have employees that might get in that situation, is there a way to know? I mean, maybe there's some kind of psychological tests or something that they, you know, those ones they.
I wish I had the money we
Myers-Briggs
spent
or
on
something,
testing to
yeah.
try to answer that
Yeah, I'm
question.
just trying to figure out how you would know, or if that's just a hit or miss kind of.
I think, no, I don't think there's any ironclad. We've used everything from predictive index to Myers-Briggs to a whole battery of testing that goes through. I think working with them, looking at how they do things personally, not necessarily how they're doing things with your money, how are they doing things personally? And are they being entrepreneurial, are they very conservative investors? I don't think there's an ironclad. What I would do more of if I was going back and starting again, and still may do some of it, is do something like a phantom stock deal, to where they have a stock that says, I own this, but it's really mirroring the real stock. So he's not taking a risk because it will always be worth whatever you say it's worth. And that way, they can feel more comfort level. But I don't think there's a sure answer for that. And the kids today, you know, when they hire in, they expect to be a manager within a month, half owner by a year. They don't even know what the business is about in a year. I mean, but that's going to be a huge challenge with young people, aggressive young people, and there's some really bright kids in it. But it's going to, you've got
Well,
to
the trend now too is not to stay with a company for a long period of time. They're actually, you know, they.
And I think the government's going to force us to make even our 401ks where they're transferable. That's even going to make that problem worse. But building loyalty is tough. But the other side of it is, you put handcuffs on somebody that wants to leave, you've got a miserable employee. So,
Yeah.
I wish I had a magic answer. I'd sure share it with you, but
But yeah, there have been times in jobs that I know and people that I'm close to where maybe they, you know, were scared and wanted to leave, but it was like, oh gosh, I've got this, you know, great retirement plan, or I've got this great, you know, insurance, whatever it was, there was some incentive that you held on for, and then down the road it, you know, it panned out. But
ESOP is a great answer to that. And it's also tax-free. That's the other thing that makes an ESOP very attractive. If you can get involved in an ESOP company, you pay no income tax. It might be something you want to look at on your construction company.
DSOP?
There's a accounting firm in Evansville, and I keep thinking their name offhand, BKD.
BKD.
Is that right?
BKD.
They are one of the leading advisory, I'm not supposed to promote firms in here, I'm
We're
sorry.
not promoting them, you just asked a question.
But, we don't use them, by the way, except for specific things, but
that's helpful.
they're good enough that their top ESOP guy is now president of Houghton's Industry. So
Yeah.
that tells you how good they are. If you're serious about it, go to somebody who knows what they're doing, because, you know, just like every contractor thinks they can build everything, every accountant thinks they can tell you about ESOP. It has a lot of pitfalls, but IRS is foaming at the mouth to figure out how to tax ESOP. So I don't know how long it'll last, but it's great right now. But anyway, that's another way where you have a small title employee, you can see it grow, but you don't bet the farm on that first. So I don't know. There's not a
Thank you.
good answer.
Thank you very much.
At what point did you decide that you needed a board, and what criteria did you set for picking a board?
I've known for years that I need a board. And I'll pick on Carney again, but Carney says, you know, your problem is you don't need partners or a board because you're too hard-headed and you won't listen. And there was some truth to that. So you have to be humbleized enough you're willing to listen to them. And the other is finding the right, it takes a lot of work to have a board because you have to find the right people, you have to bring them up to speed, you've got to pay them well. But in 2000 and I guess about 4, 5, somewhere in there, we were growing so fast and doing so well, I knew I needed outside help in managing what was going on. But we were up to about 10 companies, working in about 20 states, and you know, we were so spread out. I knew we didn't get some systems around it. It was going to get out. I thought it was going to be a growth problem. I never thought it was going to be a collapse problem. But so that was. And I was very fortunate. I ran into Earl Fisher, some of you may know from Owensboro. Earl and I were good friends. He came on our board. So I just had some people, you want friends, but you won't want close friends that won't tell you what you need to hear. And that's always hard on my ego and everybody else's from that standpoint. So I would say if I was doing it again, once we got 50 million to 100 million, I would think a board makes sense. Up to that, I think just good advisors, if you've got the right people. And they're out there. I mean, you've got some great entrepreneurs in this area that have done some pretty neat things. And it's amazing to me. I'll tell you a quick story. We accidentally bought a concrete operation in Nashville, and this is a true story in auction.
How do you accidentally buy?
We got tired of waiting on ready-mix trucks in Paducah, in late 70s. 1980, we bought Federal Materials Concrete Company because they were furnishing the concrete. So we had that company. We knew we were going to have to move it from downtown. Concrete company in Nashville went bankrupt and was up for auction. We went down with the idea we were going to buy the conveyors to move to Paducah. Well, as they do with land these days, they bid pieces and then they put it all together. And long story short, we bid $35,000 for the whole plant, no property. Nobody bid. Not a soul. This was about a 60-year-old plant in the 80s. So it was very old. It was all gravity fed. It was really a neat operation. And with the idea we were going to put up barges and bring them to do. Before we got out of the room, the guy that owned the property said, "Why don't you lease the property and open it in Nashville?" And this is when the recession in 80, 81, if you remember that. It was pretty tough. But I think the day we bought that plant was the day of the recession bottom. I really, truly think it started to make sense. But I picked out the 3 top people in Nashville I thought business-wise. And I called all 3 of them and said, "I need an hour of your time for some advice about Nashville." And all 3 of them said yes. And those people were invaluable in insight. And I was worried about, even considering going to Nashville. Somebody didn't even know anything about concrete business, going into a big city, and will we be hometown or homer? What all would happen? But anyway, all 3 of them encouraged us to come. One of them kept calling about once a year. He would call me until he died. "How you doing? How's things going?" The other 2 went on to other things. But so people will give you your time, and they will help you where they can if you just ask. They're not going to come and tell you what to do, but they will share. Sometimes you may not want to take advice, but it's certainly wise to listen. Yes, sir.
You made a statement early on, and the expression in your facial was priceless. I've seen it echoed, mirrored many times. Banking, the way banking used to be done. You know where I'm going with this. To be able to walk into a bank, present like you did, with an issue. "Hey, this has happened to me. I gotta go. What are we gonna do?" Those days are done. To be fortunate enough, as you were, as I was, to be able to go into a bank and have that kind of relationship with a banker to where they were there and able to help you, instead of giving lip service to it, wanting to, but having it go to the home office for consideration and then all the paperwork, it's a killer to business.
It is. It's that and worse. I mean, we were dealing with a major U.S. bank when this crash started. About the same time, their board in some uppity up tower somewhere said, "We want to deal with no more construction companies, period." And so they sent out the edict, sever all relations. This is when everything's crashing. So finding relationships meant nothing. The board said, "You're gone." So local, regional banks are going to be the salvation of this country. And the problem is their size and how big of things they can do. But build a relationship with a local owned, managed bank. I don't care if you do some business with a national bank, but you better have a local relation. And I'll give you an example of how this is. In January, and I told you we got many blessings answered. In January, we got a call and said, would you all be interested in taking over the Smithland Power Project on the Ohio River? It was about 50% complete, about $300 million project. We didn't even know it was in progress. But the first thing I thought of was payroll, cash flow. I mean, you know, and we did two things. We set our field management team to the job site and gave them 4 hours to decide whether they could run the job. And they said they could do it. The next thing I did, I went to a local bank. I said, we don't have a clue what this is going to do. We don't know how we're going to work it out. But I need $2 million additional line just in case we need it for payrolls, et cetera, because we don't have a clue what they're going to say when they take it. They said, okay. Now, with that came some caveats, and it wasn't quite as smooth as it used to be. But within 24 hours, we had our field people ready to go and the bank ready to go where we could do that. So that's why I say, if we'd been dealing with a national bank at that point, you would have never gotten that kind of approval. Fortunately, it was a local bank big enough to do what we needed. So I'm a huge advocate. Pick the bank that you've got the relation or you can work with. But don't be dealing with a branch bank out here of somebody that's going to make decisions miles away. It will come back to haunt you. Unless you make bukus of money and you're worried about investing and not needing it someday. But you're right, but there are still relations out there.
But like you were saying, finding a bank, a local bank that's large enough to be able to do that. Sometimes, you know, depending on where you are, search out and find a bank that is big enough and still willing to do that, because that is, business only knows one thing, and that's the lifeblood, and that's money. And to be able to get it when you need it. When you don't need it, it's like anything else. People will knock you down trying to give you things.
Exactly.
But when you really need it, you hear crickets. You know.
You got to be where they keep jerking out money to you at the wrong time. I mean, that could put you out of business overnight. Mark.
Just to piggyback on that, our most recent deal was stretching for us, and finding, we did have some difficulties finding the right bank. In fact, some of our deals have been put together by creating an environment where it gets participated. And you find that lead bank, but maybe it's just a little too big for them, and then utilizing their relationships as well as ours. Our most recent deal is led by a Louisville bank, but it has participation from a local bank. One of the smaller community banks that we've developed a relationship with over the years. So sometimes that can be a part of the tapestry that we found anyway works for us. And that's a scalable issue. Your companies are a whole lot bigger and more far-flung than ours, but it's an issue that translates, and that's really the beauty of this program, because probably 98% of the issues we all face, whether we're a small business or significantly larger, the issues and many of the answers and advice translate well.
One of the things, I've done a few of those, and they were a lot more popular before the crash.
Right.
But we tried to get the local bank to be the managing bank, even though they might not have the largest percentage in it.
Yeah.
And big banks like that, because they're not close enough to really have a feel for the project. So even though it sounds like, why would a 10 or 15% bank be able to control it? Sometimes if you get the right players, you can make that work. And we've done some business with a bank in Bowling Green. I thought it was really going to be a great relation. And evidently they've had some hard times and changed a lot of people. So sometimes you start down the road and it doesn't work either. But I mean, they haven't been bad, but they just don't have the excitement that we want in a relationship. But you're right. But one of the things you do find in that you have to be careful of, it's hard to get local banks to syndicate a deal. if you have 3 small banks within your community, chances are that will not work. And I don't know why, but I've never seen that.
You don't understand it?
I don't either, but now it's typically it'll be one local and then they'll go for a larger
Larger
bank.
regional.
But the feds are changing the rules every day on banks, so I mean, they've got a terrible world in their own environment.
And that's really what has driven, you know, this isn't about obviously bashing the banking industry. Thank God for them. It's the regulatory environment that has driven these changes that we've talked about, largely.
Dodd-Frank was one of the worst pieces of legislation ever passed. And most of us don't get the full brunt of it by any sense of the word in terms of audit statements and that sort of thing. But it dramatically changed what the bank has to do business with you, and that's where the costs go up.
Right. Other questions?
We didn't get to talk about race cars. I've got pictures of
Billy, we may have you back, and you can tag team with Don Bowles. I understand you know Don.
If you haven't had Don here, you
we
can.
have. We have.
And I've got some business cards here, and I've also got some handouts from the race car.
We know what Billy's passion is.
Don is the one, and I got to say that, you know, a lot of people successful, whatever, they lose the detail. They go on to the big picture stuff. Don has got to be the most detailed, best mechanic I have ever run into. Very few people realize that, even if you do business with him. But if he builds an engine, he will know every orifice size, every bolt size, and
He's a
make it
mechanical
work.
genius.
He is unbelievable. And I don't know him that well, but occasionally we cross paths at the racetrack. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. For Maria and me, this has been a real pleasure because it's been like old home week. Not only having Billy here and the joy of seeing him again, but also want to give a tip of the hat to one of our newbies, and I hope it won't be your last time, or for that matter, yours, Billy. Since you get up at 4:30 every morning, this is easy to get to if you choose to. How many first-timers do we have here today? Okay, I knew we had, yeah, right.
First time today, huh?
Yeah. Want to introduce Sean Jones, and Sean, I didn't bring your card up with me, but Sean is Senior Environmental Scientist with Natural Resource Management Solutions. We're glad to have you here. And I think came as a guest of Rick Whitledge. And the other person, and this is the Old Home Week comment, is Melody Doom Schrader. She's now from Henderson. Billy and I knew her, and Maria and I knew her very well back when we lived in Paducah. Melody was the chamber exec there. I heard her say to somebody out here she's still a recovering chamber exec. She's moved on to other fields and is a registered lobbyist, and I would call you a community activist from what I see in Henderson, where she now lives with her husband Horace. Very involved in helping develop in certain areas of the city community gardens, and I'm sure other things as well. So we're happy to have you and hope you come back. Carol, Kevin, Ruth Ann, do we know who's on the docket next week?
Yeah, we do.
We do.
And that is?
House of Style. I was trying to House of Style will be speaking the new salon in town. This is one of the new,
Excellent.
very exciting, and
New startup.
And I think we
we're
have.
having two next week.
Yes, we do. A Shepherd's Love is at New Dacres in Sotna.
All right.
They're only been in business a few weeks.
And whereas we say sometimes, you know, sometimes we learn and sometimes we teach here. I think this week we learned, next week we might be teaching. So they're very eager to hear what we have to add to their business.
Excellent. So come with your good questions that will hopefully turn into an educational process for them as well as us. The following week, is that when Dan, and I can't call his last name, Richardson is speaking?
Yes.
Okay. We're as you think of additional folks, whether from away or right here in the Madisonville-Hopkins County area, think with us, bring those names to the organizers, and we're scheduling primarily out in September now, so that's a nice issue. As you two think of others from away or local, feed that information to us, because you may have some contacts that we may not have. And this is a really good program. We're the only one in the state of Kentucky. So with that, thank you for being here. Look forward to seeing you next week.